Hello and welcome to the EILEEN'S Army podcast. I want to brush upon today about the fear that was involved in daring to make this podcast. If you have experienced parental narcissistic abuse or any narcissistic abuse, you've probably been silenced and have absolute fear around speaking up, telling your truth. And that is true of me. Obviously, I feel like my family is getting close to disowning me anyway. Because, well, once the game's up, it's up, I think. I hope not, but because in my idealistic way of thinking, I would like to think that we could all live harmoniously and respect each other's boundaries. And I think if we didn't live in such an enabling society, things would be different. So it's important to share your voice, be open, because that's the only way things can change in the world. The black void. Another thing that has got in my way for many years, and I still battle with it now, is this blockage, this block that gets in the way of my success. I self-sabotage, I feel blocked, I procrastinate, and I know that comes from my past as well. When I explored that in therapy, what this block was, I went back, went into myself, into my feelings, and what I perceived was just a black denseness, a black wall, a black void, which we translated as death, which it absolutely is. It's a fear of death. And the fear of death comes from a self-preservation as a child, to know that you cannot be seen, safely anyway. If you are seen, you're in big trouble. And the kind of abuse that you are exposed to isn't so obvious. It's bit by bit, subtle, chipping away, repetition, which gives it the mind control, brainwashy effect. Especially the repetition, the constant gaslighting, where you are fed a reality again and again until it's in there. It's absolutely in there. So that black void has held me back for a long time, and I'm here to share this with you. If you struggle with this kind of thing, that you can do it too. I was reading before about the effects of narcissistic abuse on children from parents, and it causes brain damage, which affects you long term. So having a hard time with memories, remembering things, and difficulty with managing emotions, especially ones like shame and guilt that the narcissist would often use to control. But it's not impossible to overcome these problems, because for a long time I did feel really heavy guilt, and it prevented me from I spent a long time worrying, and I have an anxiety disorder, depressive disorder that I've had since I was really young. But I know that it can be overcome, and as time goes on, it definitely gets better, especially if you're on a therapeutic path. Don't ever stop having therapy, different therapies, because it can totally be overcome. The guilt, if you listen to my last podcast, you'll know that I experienced an awakening, and quite suddenly, about 5 years ago. And everything changed for me. People couldn't manipulate me anymore. It was impossible, and over time, well, not impossible at first, but over time, and sometimes they slip through the net now, but I catch it quite quickly. But over time, I developed this way of being, maybe a coping mechanism, but also it was important to do it. So my new philosophy is to treat people how they treat you, and that works for me. I think I'll tell you a little story about my housemate. So of course, I've attracted these dynamics for years and years and years, and maybe I always will. I don't know. No, touch wood, I don't. So my housemate is, I guess he's a covert narcissist. And I do hate to use labels, but I only use labels for the purpose of explaining, because I don't think it's helpful in long term, but in short term recovery it is helpful. I found it helpful. But generally I will say high on the spectrum, because we're all narcissists, we all have it in us. It's just some people have it in a deeply rooted place. So my housemate has a tendency to help himself to my things, like an entitlement kind of thing. He doesn't care, he doesn't ask, he doesn't replace. I would notice my washing powder was going down very quickly, way too fast for just me. It was going down at double speed, and I lived with that for a long time, because I had the fear of confronting it, and even to move it. There was this hold that he had. It was so strange when I look back on it, but I was way too anxious to confront him about that. I was disempowered. I was advised to just move it. And I remember the day that I decided I would keep my washing powder in my room from now on was the most, wow, it was such a big deal for me to do that without feeling all this guilt that I'd upset him, even though he was the one that was being wrong. I was worried that he would feel bad. That transference, right? So that was one of the steps. And it felt so liberating. It was so liberating to just move it out of his way. And then, I carried on doing things like that. Maybe I went a bit too far. I might have tipped the balance a bit. How dare I? How dare I be so bold? But I have. I've tried to communicate with this person, don't get me wrong. It doesn't work. He doesn't even look at me when I walk in the room. He's not interested in creating any harmony. I'm better at managing what I'll tolerate from people, because I won't tolerate that. I suppose this is where I'm up to in my journey. I feel well enough, confident enough-ish to share this kind of stuff, but I'm still on the journey. I'm not quite there yet, There's there's still another mile to go, and maybe it'll never be complete. But I'll keep soldiering on, and if I can help anyone along the way, then that is amazing. So, treating people how they treat you. It's finding your dark side, embracing your dark side. Because if you've grown up in that dynamic, your narcissistic side is suppressed to give space to the authoritative narcissist. You know, you have to cater to their needs, so you become more empathic. So yeah, it's once you're free, I mean, when you think of the word narcissist, you probably think, oh my God, I don't want to be anything like that. But in reality, we are. Everybody is. It's where confidence comes from. It's part of your ego. You have to have a bit of it. And there is a dark side to every human being. And it needs to be embraced, it needs to be explored. And the way you can do that is by giving it back to the people that give it to you. I would never mistreat anybody that was kind soul and who'd made a mistake. But if somebody is repeatedly pushing me, then I'll push back. And I feel comfortable with that now, when I didn't before. I would cower away and shrink. If I was faced with a narcissist, I would fall immediately into the dynamics that I was familiar with and give my power away. I still do. In the first instance, I give it all to them. Like, oh, you're the narcissist. You take the lead. Yes, but I only tolerate it for a bit before I find my voice again. It's a bit problematic, really, because they end up being a bit surprised, and they can kind of turn and do the whole slander thing. So you have to, if you're navigating this as a game, it has to be done in a kind of a game kind of way. You definitely need to be along the road to recovery quite a bit to be able to play the game. It's not nice. It's toxic, and really, you want to eliminate toxic people from your life, but if you can't avoid it, like in a work situation, you have to play the game. Use your empathy to study that person. See what they study you. They find out what your weaknesses are, what triggers you, so that they can use it on you. So you have to do the same to them. You have to find out what motivates them, what triggers them. Because honestly, from what I've experienced so far, narcissistic types are manipulated by each other. They play with each other. They play little power games with each other and trigger each other. I've seen it. And they play the game with each other, so they'll have a comeback. Just a toxic game of rubbish. But if you can use your empathy, you have a greater advantage in this kind of toxic game. I'm not recommending it by any stretch, but as a way to cope and to survive in a world that is absolutely enabling of narcissism. It couldn't be more enabling. The society that we live in is basically designed on a template of narcissistic abuse. It's incredible. It blows my mind. So, yeah. Use your empathy to tune into that person, see where their weaknesses lie, and think about how you can use that to your advantage. And again, you can find out about that, more about that, if you read Robert Greene's material, which is kind of just where I'm up to. I'm just sharing where I'm up to on my journey. in the hope that I can help somebody else in theirs. Because I haven't really met anyone that has been in this place where I am, or anybody that really wants to speak openly about their stuff, because understandably it's kind of dangerous and you have a lot to lose by doing it. You're at risk of being attacked. Where I am with my mentality, whether it's good for me or not, is I want justice. I want to change the world by being honest and open and holding people accountable. And whether that cause opens a big can of worms, that can of worms needs to be opened. And I think if you stay consistent to your truth over time, smear campaigns, slander, they don't hold up in the long term, but your truth will and does. So it's just a waiting game. Time. If you've tuned in, thank you. I hope you've gained something or enjoyed listening to this, and if there's any subject you would like to talk about or hear about from my perspective, embracing the shadow and parental narcissistic abuse, or even the awakening, let me know, leave a comment and I will address it. Thank you. Bye.